Nightmares. We all experience them. But what do they really mean? Why do we have bad dreams? Are there any psychological reasons for them? Nightmares are the source of many of the horrors we see in stories, myths, movies, and games. They represent our encounter with the dark side of our subconscious, which often involves confronting some of the most painful aspects of our personality. And we don't know what that part of ourselves is until we come face to face with it. Nightmares are different from other dreams in both quantity and quality. They happen less frequently to most people, but their intensity and vividness can cause such distress that we find them hard to forget. Unlike most dreams, they can cause fear, anxiety, pain, embarrassment, sadness, or great unhappiness. The word nightmare is also used to describe any difficult or frightening situation. Some nightmares are so unforgettable that they color our lives for many years, or even stay with us forever. Many psychiatrists pay special attention to the pathology of nightmares, which are considered negative psychological phenomena that disturb us and disrupt our sleep. They are caused by various external and internal factors, such as stressful life situations or traumatic memories. The goal is to reduce their frequency or completely eliminate them with medication. However, the problem is that we focus only on the pathological causes of nightmares and do not think about their purpose. Nightmares happen for a reason. If one focuses on the pathology rather than the symbolic meaning of nightmares, one misses a valuable opportunity. Nightmares are the most essential and vital dreams that have therapeutic value. They wake us up screaming, as if all our repressed contents had formed a bubble that was expanding until one night it burst and we had a nightmare. This accumulation of tension in the subconscious can potentially be expressed in previous dreams. There is something that wants to be brought to consciousness. When we wake up from a bad dream, we are forced to acknowledge our unconscious conflicts. However, we tend to forget about them and continue our daily lives, unaware of the psychological damage we are doing to ourselves. Nightmares are a form of shock therapy that our mind uses to wake us up from a deep sleep when we are unaware of psychological danger. It is our subconscious way of warning us of a dangerous situation, as if to say, "Look, something urgent is happening." The psyche is telling us to wake up and face the reality of what we have been ignoring. Most nightmares represent an opportunity for personal healing through emotional release. They may involve common dream motifs such as falling, being late or unprepared, missing flights or forgotten luggage, wearing ill-fitting clothes, losing teeth, feeling trapped or unable to move, injury or illness, encountering monsters or natural disasters, and more. These motifs are very common, but they are by no means sufficient to prove the existence of any system in the organization of dreams. One of the first nightmares can be attributed to Lilith, whose name in Hebrew means night, monster, or night witch. According to Jewish legend, Adam had a demonic wife named Lilith before he met Eve. Lilith disobeyed Adam, believing that since they were both created from dust, she was his equal. In retaliation, she was cast out of the Garden of Eden and transformed into a nightmare, or Lamia. She became known as a dangerous and promiscuous demoness of the night. A later legend claims that the snake in the Garden of Eden was Lilith, associating her with the devil. After Adam and Eve's encounter with the tree and the serpent, Adam abstained from sexual intercourse as a form of penance. It is said that Lilith had sexual intercourse with Adam at this time, giving birth to many demons that roamed the world. It was here that Lilith's reign began. Stories of Lilith date back to ancient Mesopotamia, as seen in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where there is not one, but several female demons who stalk pregnant women, steal newborn babies, and engage in wild sexual relations with men. Lilith is believed to be the source of the succubus, an evil female spirit believed to have sexual intercourse with sleeping men. The incubus is its male counterpart. The word mare in nightmare does not come from the female horse, but rather from an Anglo-Saxon term for a goblin, hag, or demon that sits on people's chests and causes them bad dreams. In Old Norse, it is known as a mara. The prefix nocturnal was added to emphasize that these creatures come at night. In Danish and Norwegian, nightmare can be translated as riding a mare, while in Swedish it is sleeping on a mare. This phenomenon has been reported throughout history, from antiquity to modern times, all over the world. Today, it is known as sleep paralysis, which differs from a nightmare in that it occurs when the person is still conscious but unable to move or speak. It can occur upon waking or falling asleep. People experience auditory and visual hallucinations, as well as intense terror and anxiety. They see threatening objects and feel pressure on the chest, making it difficult to breathe and causing suffocation. In the Scandinavian Ynglinga saga, dating from the 13th century, King Vanlandi was a great warrior who traveled widely throughout the country. He promised his wife to return in 3 winters, but he did not return for 10 winters. His wife hired a witch to cast a spell that would bring him back or kill him. The king was eager to return with his wife, but his friends and advisors forbade him, saying it was the result of witchcraft. Then he became sleepy and said that a Mara was walking on him. When the people held the king's head, they trod on his feet so that they almost broke. Then the people grabbed his feet, and the Mara pressed on the king's head until he died. In Germany, this harmful creature is often called an Alp, which is etymologically related to the word elf. In folklore, Alps and mares enter a person's room at night to cause nightmares. Even if windows and doors are tightly closed and locked, Mara can still get in through small openings, such as keyholes, which they delight in finding. In many stories, a man is tormented by a Mara every night, and one morning he decides to drill a hole in his door, seal up all the cracks, and make a stick that fits perfectly in the hole. He knew that Maras could enter a house through even a small hole, but they would not be able to get out if all the holes were blocked. So he asked a friend to sleep with him, and if he moaned, the friend should stick a stick in the hole so that the Mara would not get in. In the morning, there was a beautiful naked woman in the room. However, the man did not know that once you caught a Mara, it was impossible to get rid of it, so he had to marry her. They had children and lived happily. One day, the man told his wife about the hole through which the Mara had crawled out and pulled out a stick. It immediately flew out through the hole and never returned. There are also several spells, prayers, or incantations to drive away the Mara. Using protective symbols in dreams is a common practice throughout human history. In Japanese mythology, the Baku, or Dream Eater, is a spirit said to devour nightmares. This creature is depicted as a mythical beast made up of various body parts of other animals. Upon waking from a nightmare, people would call upon the Baku for protection, saying, "Devour, O Baku, devour my bad dream." They would also call upon the Baku before going to sleep to prevent nightmares. However, one must be careful, because if the body is left hungry after consuming unwanted nightmares, it will continue to eat away at the person's hopes and dreams, leading to an empty and meaningless existence. When we sleep, our brains go through natural cycles of activity, including non-REM and REM sleep. When we first fall asleep, we experience the first stages of REM sleep. In stage 1, we are in a relaxed state of wakefulness and are beginning to fall asleep. People who wake up after this stage often think they are fully awake. Hypnic jerks are common, which resemble the jump a person experiences when startled, sometimes accompanied by a sensation of falling. In stage 2, our heart rate and body temperature decrease. We fall into a light sleep. In stage 3, known as deep sleep, a person experiences parasomnias, sleep disorders that include sleepwalking and nightmares. Night terrors differ from nightmares in that the latter occur during REM sleep. Night terrors are episodes in which a person wakes up in terror and often screams, cries, hits, or tries to escape. They may have a rapid heartbeat, heavy breathing, sweating profusely, and slurred speech. In more severe cases, the person may hit others, damage nearby objects, or even run into walls and furniture. The content of the episode can be difficult, if not impossible, to remember. Around 70 to 90 minutes later, you experience your first REM cycle. This is when a person transitions from deep sleep to lighter sleep. On average, we experience 4 to 6 REM cycles each night, and these cycles get longer as the night progresses. During REM sleep, brain activity increases and the brain paralyzes the body so that the mind can dream peacefully. Otherwise, the sleeper might walk, move, or act out their dreams. Most dreams and nightmares occur during REM sleep. As we get older, REM sleep decreases in duration and typically accounts for only 20 to 25% of an adult's total sleep, or 90 to 120 minutes per night. One possible explanation for why children are more likely to have nightmares is that they are closer to the subconscious than adults, as their ability to think rationally is still developing. This means that children may be more likely to see monsters under their beds or in closets, as these creatures are part of their reality. A famous example of this phenomenon can be seen in Dostoevsky's novel Crime and Punishment. The protagonist, Raskolnikov, is unable to pay for his studies and experiences mental anguish and moral dilemmas. He considers robbing and murdering Alyona Ivanova, a stingy pawnshop owner, to solve his financial problems. He even rehearses the crime by visiting her and pawning her old watch. Despite his intentions, he fails to commit the murder and ultimately suffers the consequences of his actions. Afterwards, he enters a tavern and meets Marmeladov, a good-natured drunkard who goes on to describe the details of his desperate situation. While helping the drunk man home, the former student witnesses Marmeladov's tuberculosis-stricken wife just beat the young man. The next day, Raskolnikov receives a long letter from his overworked and self-sacrificing mother to help him with his studies. His sister agreed to marry a man she did not love, hoping that he would help her brother. Disappointed by the letter, Raskolnikov seeks solace in a tavern, where he drinks some vodka. On the way home, he feels sleepy and finds a place to rest, falling asleep immediately. In the dream, he is a child of about 7, walking with his father. It seems that some kind of celebration is taking place. The peasants are singing and seem drunk. A large, heavy cart is parked near the tavern. The little mare is weak and cannot pull the cart. At the tavern owner's invitation, several drunken men climb into the cart and laugh at the owner's claim that a weak animal can pull the cart. The owner shouts, "I'll make her gallop," and begins to whip the mare, who, tugging with all her might, can barely move the cart. When others join in, the child screams in protest and tries to stop them. No one pays attention. The cruelty continues when the mare begins to kick in protest. The owner continues to attack the animal, furious that he cannot kill her. When someone in the crowd shouted, "Bring an axe to kill her," the angry and drunken peasants joined in and beat the mare to death. The child ran to the dead mare, hugged her and kissed her bloody head. His father grabbed him and carried him out of the crowd. The boy sobbed, "Father, why did they kill the horse? They were drunk. They were cruel. It's none of our business," the father replied. Sobbing and gasping for breath, the little boy hugged his father. Raskolnikov woke up in horror, gasping for breath, with his hair wet with sweat. "Good God," he cried. "Am I really going to take an axe and hit her on the head, splitting her skull?" He shook off the damn nightmare and felt relief. After several hours of torment, Raskolnikov decided to kill the moneylender. Dostoevsky brilliantly depicted this nightmare in a way that makes it seem real and psychologically convincing. If we imagine Raskolnikov coming into the consulting room, we see a disturbed young man who is experiencing acute psychological stress and obsessed with murderous thoughts. Given his situation, it is not surprising that he has a nightmare. Of course, there are external reasons. He is under physical stress. He has not slept well, has eaten little, and has been drinking alcohol. He is under great stress because of his financial situation and the alarming news of his sister's upcoming marriage. Raskolnikov's unresolved psychological problems are running through his head and affecting his current life situation. Fever dreams are experiences that occur when you have a fever. They are more vivid, bizarre, and negative than normal dreams, and contain themes such as spatial distortions, threats, danger, and illness. Franz Kafka's works capture the atmosphere of fever dreams beautifully. In his novel, The Trial, the protagonist, Joseph K., wakes up one morning to find himself under arrest for committing no crime. He is accused of an unknown crime, and the judge has no information about the case other than that it was sent to him by his superiors. Joseph is informed by telephone that he is being summoned to court and is given only vague details about the location and time of the hearing. He has great difficulty finding the court in the maze-like building. When he finally manages to find it in a remote corner of the attic, he is reprimanded for being late. K must stand trial and defend himself against an incomprehensibly complex and faceless bureaucratic system that has taken over his life. He is accused of crimes he does not even suspect. In Kafka's short story, The Metamorphosis, the protagonist, Gregor Samsa, wakes up one morning from disturbing dreams to find himself transformed into a monstrous vermin in his bed. This shows one of the deepest forms of alienation, a human being trapped in an inhuman body. The contrast between the extraordinary situation of Gregor's transformation and the ordinary terms he uses to describe it, a mistake trying to get to work, creates a sense of the absurd. His family is horrified and disgusted by his condition, although they still hope that Gregor is sane. His mother calls him her unfortunate son, as she understands that psychologically, each of us has a terrible monster inside us that needs our love. While most of us experience spontaneous nightmares, which are often more creative in nature, many also experience recurring nightmares, flashbacks, and memories triggered by traumatic experiences. This is especially true for people suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic nightmares can be particularly painful because the person relives the traumatic event, which can be as horrific as the original. This psychological scar can worsen and lead to substance abuse and alcoholism. Trauma therapy can facilitate the healing process and help resolve some of the everyday issues a person faces. Although it may seem paradoxical, encouraging verbalization and exploration of trauma can be cathartic. Writing down nightmares is also a form of emotional therapy. A person may also experience recurring nightmares, which may or may not be caused by traumatic experiences. This is especially common in adolescence, but can continue throughout life. They recur because they are trying to drive home something the person is missing. They usually stop occurring once the person becomes aware of their message, whether in a dream state or waking life. When our ego relationship changes in response to our dreams, the subconscious responds. Perhaps one of the most unusual types of dreams are precognitive or prophetic nightmares. People have experienced terrifying visions that later came true in reality, as if they had briefly gained access to a door to the future. These are rare cases and can only be verified if the predicted event actually occurred. In his work, Synchronicity, the principle of a causal connection, Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist Carl Jung explored coincidences that were so significant that they defied statistical probability. These are called synchronicities, or meaningful coincidences, and occur when an event in a person's inner life, a dream, a vision, a feeling, etc., coincides with an event in the outer world. The inner vision came true. Jung describes a precognitive, a vision he experienced. I saw yellow waves, floating debris, and the death of countless thousands of people. 2 weeks passed, and the vision returned, even more violent than before, and an inner voice said, "Look at this. It is quite real, and it will happen. You cannot doubt it." Many other visions followed, including one of the seas turning red with blood and his soul asking him if he could accept war and destruction. These visions included images of weapons, human remains, sunken ships, and destroyed nations. World War I began shortly thereafter. Jung wrote little about the phenomenon of nightmares. It is possible to interpret nightmares from Jung's perspective, based on his general theory of dreams. Jung writes that dreams are spontaneous, products of the unconscious, uncontrolled by the will, pure and natural. They show us the unvarnished truth and can therefore help us return to a state that corresponds to our basic human nature when our consciousness has strayed from its foundations. A key concept in Jung's dream theory is the compensatory function of dreams, which reveals the inevitable one-sidedness of conscious life and focuses on aspects of which we are not sufficiently aware. This is why dreams can be useful in helping us to better understand ourselves and return to a more balanced state. A single dream can be difficult to interpret with certainty. Therefore, I do not attach much importance to the interpretation of individual dreams. A certain degree of certainty can be achieved by interpreting a series of dreams, in which subsequent dreams can correct mistakes made in previous ones. Although Jungians place great emphasis on the patient's original dream, in therapy, analysts should be careful not to place too much emphasis on individual dream images. Instead, they should also consider the dreamer's previous dreams, conscious attitudes, and personal associations. A dream never says, "you should," or "it's true." It presents an image, just as nature allows a plant to grow, and we must draw our own conclusions from it. If we have a nightmare, it may mean that we are either too afraid or not afraid enough. Dreams always reveal to us what we do not know and offer new ways to overcome our psychological obstacles. They are not unnecessary and do not take away our precious time for rest. They are a self-regulating function of the psyche, which strives for balance and completeness. Jung calls this process individuation, our progression to psychological maturity. All work with sleep is essentially subjective, and sleep is like a theater, where the dreamer himself is the actor, the stage, the director, the producer, the author, the spectator, and the critic. This is the interpretation of dreams on a subjective level, where each object in the dream corresponds to an element of the person's own psyche. Jung calls this the personal unconscious, containing personal experiences that have been repressed or forgotten. This is where complexes, emotionally charged groups of ideas or images that can be positive or negative reside. People with negative complexes often experience more nightmares because they have a knot of unconscious feelings that can be detected in their behavior and that prevent them from achieving psychological wholeness. The subjective level can be further reinforced by the objective level. Jung's term for the collective unconscious, which contains archetypes, instinctive behavior patterns that we are born with. Dreams are influenced not only by personal experiences, but also by archetypal forces that have a mythological structure that includes the entire spiritual heritage of human evolution. These forces are felt in what Jung simply called big dreams. These dreams usually have few personal associations and are accompanied by feelings of the supernatural, or the uncanny, or horror, such as an apocalypse or a theophany, meeting with the deity. Because dreams contain images that are not created, with conscious intent, they are self-portraits of the mental life process and can be used to gain an objective understanding of the psyche's telos, ultimate purpose, or functioning. Interpreting a dream may take months or years, or the person may never fully understand its meaning. The turning of the spindle sets 1,000 threads in motion, but we can only concentrate on one of them. We cannot always do this, because the visible thread branches into many threads that may escape our attention. The difficulty of interpreting dreams makes many of us show our ignorance and think that they are nonsense and superstition. However, a dream is a spontaneous self-portrait, symbolically reflecting the real situation in our subconscious. A symbol is the best way to express relatively unknown psychological content. This is the job of a psychologist who can help the patient to reveal his true potential with his erudition in the field of symbolism. Although Jung could help others interpret their dreams, having interpreted some 80,000 dreams in his lifetime, he also had the humility to admit his own difficulties in interpreting them. He writes, "I understand my own dreams no better than anyone else because they are always beyond my understanding, and I have the same difficulty with them as anyone who knows nothing about dream interpretation. Knowledge is of no value when it comes to one's own dreams." Jung believed that nightmares have an intention, which seems to be to communicate an acute mental disorder in dramatic form. This correction penetrates consciousness and threatens the ego. The new content may appear as an uninvited guest or intruder, as in this dream. It is night, and I am alone at home. I think I hear a man trying to break into my house and I panic. I hear him trying to open the door, but it is locked. Terrified, I run and hide under the bed. Realizing that he has found an unlocked window, I wake up in a panic. In this nightmare, I feel as if some unknown aspect of my psyche is threatening me. Nightmares can be useful because they provide a clear picture of the ego's ability to cope with threatening unconscious content. In my dream, I encounter what Jung calls the shadow, which contains my repressed content and is mostly present in the personal unconscious. A common theme in nightmares is being chased by a sinister figure or monster, which can be compared to the fear of being chased by a predator in ancient times. It often happens that when we come face to face with our shadow, hostility can turn into friendliness, or the beast can turn into a man to convey an important and urgent message in the form of psychological insight. Therefore, it is important to confront your fears, whether in the nightmare itself or in reality. We can never escape from our shadow. It always seems to know where we are. This happens because we are running away from a part of ourselves. Every person has a dark side, and by ignoring it, we only give it more power to control us, as in the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which leads to mental dissociation. When we create an image that shows only the good side of us and forget about the negative sides, it leads to one-sidedness and suppression of our negative emotions. This can lead to neuroses and psychological projection, and we lose the opportunity to become whole. On the contrary, health comes when we follow a path that is true to ourselves. Nightmares are often a sign of neurosis. People who have frequent nightmares may have more psychological problems and unresolved conflicts in their lives. In an archetypal sense, nightmares represent the negative side of the Great Mother, which can be seen as the terrible or all-devouring mother. This is the main theme of many nightmares. Jungian analyst Erich Neumann writes, "The symbolism of the terrible mother draws its images primarily from within. That is, the negative, elemental character of the feminine principle is expressed in fantastic and chimerical images that do not originate from the external world. This is because the terrible woman is a symbol of the unconscious. The dark side of the terrible mother takes the form of monsters. In the myths, fairy tales and nightmares of all peoples and cultures, even in our own nightmares, witches, vampires, ghouls, and ghosts attack us. These terrifying figures represent a black and white cosmic egg, personifying the archetypal feminine principle, which gives birth to terrible images that reveal the dark and bottomless side of life and the human psyche. Just as the world, life, nature, and soul were perceived as the generative and nourishing, protective and warming femininity, so their opposites also appear in the image of the feminine principle. Death and destruction, danger and suffering, hunger and nakedness appear as helplessness in the presence of the dark and terrible mother. Regression for both women and men leads to a return to the mother's womb, to a state of helplessness, to non-existence. However, even here there is the possibility of returning to the surface with new possibilities for life. In the nightmare, there is a contradiction between the regressive return to the mother's womb, the all-consuming mother, and the advancement to greater consciousness and acceptance of life, the Great Mother. It is not easy to determine the source of the nightmare, since the unconscious content is, well, unconscious. The content has been repressed and needs to be brought into the light of consciousness. During an intense period of disorientation and inner turmoil, Jung developed a method of confronting his unconscious content while remaining fully awake and conscious during the experience, known as active imagination. Jung was able to confront the dark night of his soul and find a treasure that was difficult to find. The culmination of his experiences is presented in his Red Book. Jung considered active imagination to be the most powerful tool for accessing unconscious content. It involves dialogue with various aspects of oneself in a state of full wakefulness and awareness, which requires solitude, silence, and concentration. Often, however, we are unable to connect what is troubling us to any specific event or situation. Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson suggests that when this happens, we can turn to our imagination and allow the unconscious to come to the fore. We can activate our imagination by asking questions such as, where does this obsession come from? Who is making me feel this way? What does this person look like? During therapy, if the therapist is uncomfortable with these disturbing images or ignores them, the patient may feel that he or she is not being taken seriously. This may result in a lack of progress in therapy. On the other hand, if the therapist pays close attention to these affected images and works with them, the patient has a better chance of making progress. Active imagination also allows us to continue the dream by imagining what will happen next. You can effectively continue your dream by expanding it. This is especially useful when you suddenly wake up in the middle of a dream. Dreams and imagination come from the same place in the subconscious, so you can continue the story, take the next steps the dream leads to, and solve the problem. Interestingly, Jung found that the number of dreams significantly decreased when a person actively developed the imagination. Problems that may have arisen in dreams are resolved and worked through. As a result, dreams become more focused, concentrated, and less repetitive. Jung recommended this method for people who experience intense, disturbing, and frequent nightmares. Another way to interact with your unconscious is through lucid dreaming. This happens when we become aware that we are dreaming while in a dream. In lucid dreaming, we can travel through the dream and even control the environment, interact with dream characters, and ask questions about their purpose. This technique can also be used to combat nightmares. Lucid dreams can occur unintentionally when the dreamer notices something out of place. However, there are ways to increase your chances of having a lucid dream. Keeping a dream journal is essential to recording your thoughts immediately upon waking. After consistently doing this exercise over a long period of time, you may notice recurring patterns in your dreams. Awakening, initiated lucid dreaming, or wild dreaming, occurs when you enter a dream directly from waking life. This can be accomplished by lying still and keeping your mind awake. After a while, you will enter a half-sleep state until you enter a dream image. You may also experience hypnagogic hallucinations, where you see or hear things that seem real as you transition from wakefulness to sleep. Intensive, a lucid dream, initiated by waking, can be accompanied by a mnemonic lucid dream induction, or SOFT, a mnemonic lucid dream induction, which involves repeating a mantra each time, such as, when I dream, I will be aware that I am dreaming. Reality checking is another way to increase your chances of having a lucid dream. Reality checking helps remind you of the state of things in the waking world. In a dream, things like viewing text, time, or a reflection in a mirror may appear, distorted, blurred, or different each time you look at them. If you pinch your nose and can still breathe, or if you press your fingers into your palm and they pass through it, it may help you realize that you are dreaming. It is helpful to conduct your own reality check and stick to it through waking practice. Lucid dreaming can help you explore the limits of your creativity, discover new sides of yourself, and allow you to befriend your shadow, a lifelong process. A woman suffering from a recurring nightmare in which she is haunted by a terrifying figure learns about lucid dreaming. As the figure begins to pursue her, she realizes that the scene seems familiar and realizes that she is dreaming. Gathering her courage, she turns to face her pursuer and screams at him, "You can't hurt me!" He stops, looking surprised. For the first time, she sees his beautiful, loving eyes. "Hurt you?" he asks. "I don't want to hurt you. I've been running after you all this time to tell you that I love you." With that, he holds out his hands, and when she touches them, he melts into her. She wakes up energized and feels great for a few days. This has helped her not only cope better with unpleasant situations, but also express her feelings when necessary. Previously, she usually avoided such situations or ran away from them. creative people such as musicians, artists, poets, and writers seem to complain of nightmares more often than other people. This may be because they experience a thin boundary between the unconscious and the external world, and their ego, sense of self, is in closer contact with the unconscious. As a result, they are more influenced by unconscious processes and less protected from them, which leads to greater psychological stress than people who are not artists. Jung writes, "Man must pay dearly for the divine gift of creativity." This does not mean that creative people are more neurotic. In fact, they may be much more psychologically balanced than non-artists, since they engage in creative tasks that require them to pay close attention to their unconscious. Not only artists, but all creative personalities owe everything great in their lives to fantasy. The artist must sacrifice his ego to become the voice of his time, acting as a bearer and a form of the unconscious psychic life of mankind. A great work of art is a product of the time, of the whole world in which the artist lives, and of the millions of people and the thousands of thoughts and activities that surround them. The work of Polish painter Zdzisław Beksinski and Swiss artist H.R. Giger was heavily influenced by their nightmares. Beksinski, a self-taught artist, wanted to paint as if he were photographing dreams. His works depict post-apocalyptic and nightmarish landscapes, with decay, death, skeletons, and deformed figures. He drew inspiration from no one, but listened to classical music and simply painted whatever came to mind. Beksinski refused to interpret or title his works, and was known as a pleasant person. Giger's art is described as biomechanical, combining human anatomy with machinery, reflecting our modern age of technology and the world of machines that take over our lives. Many of us cannot live without technology, and this is what is reflected in Giger's work. We are confused about this. Much of Giger's work is based on unconscious conflicts and dreams, a deliberate self-exploration that led him to an inner dark abyss. In searching for the source of his own nightmares, Giger realized the primary psychological importance of the trauma of biological birth. His art shows the cycle of birth, sexuality, and death, Eros and Thanatos, are intertwined. There is a deep connection between these three themes that can allow us to reconnect with the source of our being. Both of these men became artistic voices of the darkness within us. They went into the dark corners of the unconscious and settled there. Their work is an example of what it can look like to confront your own shadow. We all run from what we fear, apparently, and their home is where they show us how the dark and repressed areas of our minds can become positive works of transformative art. After going through the darkest times, a person finally sees the light that illuminates their life again. Fiction, no matter how surreal, is a reaction to reality, and sometimes it overcomes it. There are as many nights in a year as there are days, and each of them is as long. Even a happy life cannot be without a share of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness.